This episode is brought to you by CoolStuffInc.com, the #1 seller of games and gaming accessories. And GatheringMagic.com, the #1 resource for Magic the Gathering news and articles.
Hello there, YouTube. Welcome to CMDR Decks. My name is Wally D. I write for MTGCasualPlay.com. And this is my Uril the Miststalker deck. So this is my Uril the Miststalker deck. I have been playing Uril for about 2.5 years now. I play this deck in competitive 1 versus 1. I also bring it out on occasion for two-headed giant or multiplayer. And it is definitely one of my favorite decks to play. It is an Aura Voltron build, meaning that the entire purpose of the deck is to try and cause 21 points of commander damage to our opponent as soon as possible. So Uril is a 5/5 legendary beast, and he gets +2/+2 for each aura attached to him, and he has hexproof. So let's take a look at the build. We'll start with the mana base. I play 5 forests, 5 plains, and 1 mountain. Lands that tap for any of our 3 colors are Command Tower, Jungle Shrine, Reflecting Pool, Mana Confluence, City of Brass. I run quite a few duels. We have Taiga, Savannah, Plateau, Sacred Foundry, Temple Garden, Stomping Ground, Rootbound Crag, Clifftop Retreat, Sunpetal Grove, and currently running 1 Pain land, the green-white brush land. I also have fetch lands including Wooded Foothills, Windswept Heath, Arid Mesa, Misty Rainforest, Marsh Flats, and Krosan Verge. Utility lands that I run are Flagstones of Trokair, in case there's land destruction, Khalni Garden, which gives us a 0/1 green plant when it comes into play. This is really good in case we are facing sacrifice effects. We can just sacrifice our plant. Ancient Tomb for mana ramp. Contested Cliffs, this is one of my favorites. For a red, green, and tap contested cliffs, we can have Uril fight another creature, and usually he wins those battles. Cavern of Souls. Now, Cavern of Souls is probably the most important land in the deck. Not only does it help us mana fix in case we're missing like a red source to cast Uril, but it also prevents Uril from being counterspelled. When we put this onto the battlefield, we'll call creature type beast. And with that, blue mages, as long as we use the Cavern of Souls to cast Uril, blue mages will not be able to counterspell Uril. 3 of the biggest threats to a Uril Voltron deck are counterspells or mass bounce effects like Evacuation and Cyclonic Rift, Diabolic Edict effects and Sacrifice effects, and mass destruction or board wipes like Wrath of Gods and Damnation. So with my build, I've tried to include a bunch of auras and utility creatures and spells and enchantments that address our weaknesses and help us go through with our plan, which is to get through and cause 21 points of general damage. I run 17 auras in the deck. I have them laid out for you with my top 10 and then the remaining 7. So let's get started. First we have Spirit Mantle. Spirit Mantle makes Uril an 8/8 with protection from creatures. Now protection from creatures is very important to get Uril through unblocked. Along those lines I also have Unquestioned Authority, which makes Uril a 7/7 protection from creatures, and when it comes into play we get to draw a card. Shield of the Oversoul. makes Uril a 9/9 with flying and indestructible. As stated previously, evasion is very important. Probably the best enchant creature Wizards ever printed is Rancor. For 1 green, target creature gets +2/+0 and trample. So this makes Uril a 9/7 with trample. And if Rancor were to go into our graveyard, we get to put it back in our hand. The next 2 cards have similar effects. Both of them make Uril a 9/9 with trample and allow us to gain life when he deals damage. That's Unflinching Courage and Armadillo Cloak. Bear Umbra does not give Uril evasion, but does make him a 9/9. And whenever he attacks, we get to untap all lands we control. This is really good if we have more permanents we wanted to cast during our second main phase, or if we needed to save some mana back for tricks during our opponent's turn. This allows us to do that. It also gives Uril totem armor, so if our opponent casts a Wrath of God, we could sacrifice Bear Umbra, and Uril gets to stay on the battlefield. Sticking with evasion, we have Ash's Favor. This gives Uril flying, first strike, and vigilance. Really good, makes him a 7/7 that can fly over in the attack phase and then stay back to defend with vigilance. Battle Mastery, this gives Uril double strike. Runes of the Deuce, this gives Uril +2/+2, double strike, and trample. So this makes him a 9/9 that if he hits will cause 18 points of commander damage. This is the most expensive aura in the deck as far as converted mana costs of 4 and a hybrid red-green, but it is definitely a game winner. So if we can get this on Uril, it won't take long to finish the game. Those were my top 10. Now a few more auras that I really like. We're going to start with Flicker Form. Now this doesn't give Uril evasion, it just makes him a 7/7, but it does have the ability of 2 and a white to remove Uril and all auras attached to him from the game. So if an opponent casts a Cyclonic Rift or a Wrath of God or something that's going to affect the battlefield, being able to remove Uril and the auras attached to him from the game is pretty good. So Flicker Form is key to keeping Uril on the battlefield. This is one of those cards that an opponent's going to see it cast and they're going to want to grab it and read it just to see what it does. We can also put Flicker Form on one of our opponent's creatures if it was something that we needed to remove from the battlefield for a turn, either to get a blocker out of the way or other shenanigans. Fists of Ironwood. This is a recent addition to my Uril deck. It makes Uril a 7/7 with trample, but most importantly we get 2 1/1 green Saplings when this comes into play. And the reason that we need those Saplings is in case of Diabolic Edict effects. Liliana of the Veil were to be out there and we were to sacrifice a creature, we could sacrifice one of our Saplings. Vow of Wildness. This makes Uril a 10/10 with trample. Or we could use this and put it on one of our opponent's creatures, and they would not be able to attack us as long as Vow of Wildness is on their creature. So it also serves as removal. Madcap Skills, this is another new addition to my Uril build. It makes Uril a 10/7 and can't be blocked except by 2 or more creatures. Angelic Destiny. This makes Uril an 11/11 with flying and first strike. It also makes him a Beast Angel. Now the bottom part when it says whenever a creature dies, return Angelic Destiny to its owner's hands. If Uril were to die with this on him and we put him in the command zone, we would not get Angelic Destiny back. That is only if a creature goes to the graveyard. Still, making Uril an 11/11 with flying is a lot of fun. Holy Mantle. Going on the theme of our first 2 enchantments, this gives Uril protection from creatures and makes him a 9/9. The last aura I have in here is probably the one I would take out if something better came along. It is Griffin Guide, makes Uril a 9/9 with flying, and along the same lines as Angelic Destiny, if Uril were to die and put in the command zone, we would not get our 2/2 Griffin. That is only if the creature put into the graveyard dies, then we'll get our 2/2 White Griffin token. Now, before we go on, there are a few auras that are not in the deck, and I'd like to mention them real quick because I'm sure somebody's out there like, I can't believe you didn't include this. Those are Daybreak Coronet. It gives a creature +3/+3, and it can only enchant a creature that's already enchanted. I have tried this card, and it did not work well for me. It only worked like 50% of the time. I found that either I didn't have another enchantment to be on Uril, so I couldn't cast this, or somebody would destroy one of my enchantments, and then the Daybreak Coronet would fall off. And honestly, it doesn't give evasion, so it just, when it did work, it was just a little bit of overkill. So Daybreak Coronet. Ethereal Armor and Ancestral Mask both give +1/+1 for each enchantment on the field, or something like that. Again, this doesn't give evasion, and kind of overkill. Most of my auras are going to protect Uril, or make sure that he is able to sneak past with no blockers and cause some damage. Eldrazi Conscription +10/+10 and Annihilator, which is fantastic, but the casting cost is way too much. By turn 6 or 7, we're hoping to have already won with Uril. And last but not least, Instill Energy. That gives Uril haste and allows us to untap him, I believe. I don't include this one. I haven't found where I really needed haste in this deck. And again, Instill Energy doesn't give any kind of protection or evasion. So let's move on to the creatures in the deck. The name of my Uril build is Uril and Friends 13.0. That's because it took me 13 tries to get it right. And Friends because Uril's friends are the utility creatures of the deck. They're all designed to do something. So let's start with our artifact and enchantment removal. We have Qasali Pridemage. Also gives Uril Exalted. Harmonic Sliver, by far one of my favorite cards in the entire deck. Harmonic Sliver blows up in a artifact or enchantment when it comes into play, and is also very good with Sun Titan. Slimer, along the same lines, it comes in and destroys an artifact, enchantment, or land, plus it's a 2/2 Death Touch. I have a couple cards in here that allow me to draw. We have Argothian Enchantress. She's a 0/1 with Shroud, and whenever I cast an enchantment, I get a draw card. Very good to play some of these during the early game. If we're not ramping, then we're playing a couple of these utility creatures. Speaking of which, Kor Spiritdancer. If something were to happen to Uril, she could take the mantle from him, as she gets +2/+2 for each aura attached to her. And whenever I cast an aura, I get a draw card. Eternal Witness. Very good at getting any card in our graveyard back to our hand. Grand Abolisher. Another key element of the deck. This says that during our turn, opponents cannot cast spells or activate abilities. Now this is great to get Uril out on the battlefield, so if we get Grand Abolisher out there in the early game, and as long as he's on the battlefield, we have no fear of casting Uril and having him get countered. I also like to have this out there when I'm getting ready to suit Uril up with some auras. Again, no fear from the blue mages from counterspelling as long as the Abolisher is out on the battlefield. Speaking of blue mages, we have Vexing Shusher. Vexing Shusher cannot be countered, and for one hybrid red-green, I can make a spell uncounterable by spells or abilities. So really good against blue, and if I'm not playing blue, he's a cheap creature that can be on the battlefield that I can sacrifice if a Diabolic Edict effect were to target me. Aven Mindcensor. Real quick story on this guy. I was playing a Carador deck, and 2 games in a row they were able to Diabolic Tutor, fetching up Liliana of the Veil and make me sacrifice Uril. So I decided I needed some kind of defense against tutors, so that's why Aven Mindcensor is in here. It has Flash, and in response to a tutor or a fetch land that my opponents may try to do, I can flash this guy in, and they can only search the top 4 cards of their library. This has really come in handy. Saffi Eriksdotter. Saffi is a 2/2. I can sacrifice her to allow any other creature that goes to the graveyard come back into play. So if a Wrath effect were to destroy Uril and both Uril and Saffi were out there, I can let Uril go to the graveyard and then bounce him back into play off the effect of Saffi Eriksdotter. I have also used her to bring back my Sakura Tribe Elder. I've sacrificed a Tribe Elder, activated Saffi's ability to bring Tribe Elder back into play, and then sacrificed them again, and was able to get 2 basic lands from the combo of the 2 cards. Dauntless Escort, another creature that is designed to protect us from board wipes and destroy effects. All I have to do is sacrifice him, and all other creatures I control are indestructible. Sigarda, Host of Herons. Sigarda is one of my main sources to protect me against sacrifice effects. As long as Sigarda is on the battlefield, I don't have to sacrifice anything. Again, sacrifice effects are one of the Achilles heels of the deck, and Sigarda protects us from that. She can also be suited up with auras in case we don't have Uril out there, and she could be a really good beat stick if we need her. Sun Titan, I'm sure most of you are familiar with him. When he comes in a battlefield or attacks, we get to return a permanent with converted mana cost 3 or less from our graveyard to the battlefield. This is really good at getting an aura back, or to bring back our Harmonic Sliver to destroy an artifact or enchantment, or things of that nature. Our last 2 creatures are going to start off our mana ramp. We're going to start with Sakura Tribe Elder. We can sacrifice him to search our library for a basic land that comes into play tapped. We have Wood Elves. When Wood Elves comes into play, we get to search our library for a forest. This will fetch any of our Revised or Ravnica duels. I have 2 artifacts in the deck, and of course there are the 2 most broken artifacts in all of Commander. You've got Mana Crypt and Soul Ring. Again, I do play this competitive, so that's why I have these both in there. With Mana Crypt, a Cultivate, and a Forest in my hand, I can get Uril out on turn 2. So Mana Crypt is very, very important for a fast start, and as is Soul Ring. The rest of my mana ramp are spells or enchantments, in addition to the creatures there. We have Nature's Lore for 1 and a green. We get to search our library for our forest and put it into play. Farseek will go get anything but a forest, and these 2, Nature's Lore and Farseek, will search and get our dual lands. And we have 3 visits. 3 visits is just like Nature's Lore. We can go get one of our forest dual lands and put it into play. This card is a little bit more obscure to find and a little bit more expensive than Nature's Lore. As just previously stated, Cultivate and Kadama's Reach. With one of these, a forest and our Mana Crypt in hand, we can get Uril out on turn 2. Even though they do get basic lands, it is very, very cool to be able to do that. Swinging with Uril on turn 3 can pretty much say a good game. Our last part of Mana Ramp, we have Garruk Wildspeaker. I have never used his ultimate, the -4, but I have used the +1 quite a bit. It allows us to untap 2 target lands to help get Uril out a little bit faster. I have also used his -1 quite a bit to put a 3/3 green beast token out into play. This really helps us versus sacrifice effects. We can just sacrifice the beast. Okay, so one more ramp card. We have Enchant Land, Trace of Abundance. This gives an Enchanted Land Shroud, which is really good to put on our Cavern of Souls so it doesn't get strip mined. And it also allows that land to tap for 1 additional mana of any color. Now I'd like to get into the removal suite. And we're going to start with one of my favorites for artifact and enchantment removal, which is Seal of Primordium. I like to get this out in the early game, turn 2 or 3, and it kind of just sits on the battlefield and an opponent can sit there and see it and then maybe start second guessing themselves on whether they want to cast an artifact or an enchantment they may have in their hand. So it causes your opponent to second guess a little bit, and it's also recurable with Sun Titan, making it really good. Also, of course, run K-Grip. I didn't at first until I was comboed out on twice by Mikaeus and Triskelion. So I figured I needed the K-Grip in there to stop infinite combos and shenanigans like that. So more artifact and enchantment removal. Beast Within. This is one of my favorites. Destroy target permanent, and that controller gets to put a 3/3 beast creature into play. I like to put turtles there, giving my opponent a turtle. A lot of fun. But the 3/3 green beast really isn't that big of a deal. Since Uril has evasion, we're not going to worry about them blocking, and this just gets rid of a troublesome permanent. Some creature removal. We have Path to Exile, which exiles a creature. Swords to Plowshares, exiles a creature, lets them gain some life. And another new addition, I needed more permanent removal, and Oblation will take a non-land permanent and shuffle it into the owner's library. Since we're trying to win turn 6 or 7, giving our opponent 2 extra cards really isn't that big of a deal, as long as it gets rid of something that may have prevented us from winning the game. I have 2 mass removal spells. Winds of Wrath. This destroys all creatures with no enchantments on them, so as long as Uril has an aura, he will stay on the battlefield and we get rid of the rest. Austere Command, definitely one of my favorite removal spells. Really good utility. It has choose 2. We can destroy all artifacts, destroy all enchantments, destroy all creatures converted mana cost 3 or less, or destroy all creatures with converted mana cost 4 or greater. I believe I have used every phase of this card. We get Uril out on turn 5, so a turn 6 board wipe, really, really good for us. Gets rid of things that may be causing us trouble. I do have some tutors in the deck. We need them to be able to get our key pieces. We're going to start with Enlightened Tutor. Allows us to go get an artifact or enchantment. In addition to auras, I may fetch up a Soul Ring with this, or my Seal of Primordium for artifact enchantment removal. Idyllic Tutor. This goes and gets us an enchantment, and we get to put it in our hand. Again, I would maybe get a Seal of Primordium if I needed some removal, or get an aura if we needed it to win the game. Sterling Grove. This enchantment gets all of our other enchantments shroud, so they can't be the target of spells or abilities. And it also has the ability to tap 1 and sacrifice it to search our library for an enchantment card and put it on top of our library. Really good card there. 3 Dreams. Not one of my most favorite tutors. It costs 4 and a white, but it does allow us to go get 3 auras and put them into our hand. So if we need some game-winning pieces, this will help. Green Sun Zenith. As I stated before, I really like Green Sun Zenith to go get my Harmonic Sliver. So for 3 and a green, I can fetch out artifact and enchantment hate. If Uril were to get tucked, I could pay 5 and a green and bring Uril back out into play. All around good card. Eldamri's Call. Eldamri's Call is instant speed, which is really good. And again, just being able to search our library for a creature card and put it in our hand, bonus. Sylvan Library. This is awesome. I love Sylvan Library and Uril. I really don't care about the life loss, so a lot of the times I'll use my Sylvan Library and keep 1 extra, if not 2 extra cards, costing me either 4 or 8 life, and being able to stack my deck, or at least see what my next 3 cards are so I can use a fetch land to reshuffle. Really good. I have a few cards in here that are going to be my text section. I've got Angelic Renewal. This is an enchantment from Weatherlight, and it functions very similar to Saffi Eriksdotter. I like to get this out in turn 2 or 3, and then if our opponent or my opponent decides to do a Wrath or board wipe, I can sacrifice Angelic Renewal, let Uril go to the graveyard, and then he bounces right back into play. Just like with Saffi Eriksdotter, I've also used this to bring back my Sakura Tribe Elder to ramp and get 2 basic lands. I have 3 charms in the deck. Boros Charm, I have never used a 4 damage to target player, but I really enjoyed the last 2. I have made my permanents indestructible quite a few times, and target creature gains double strike. I've used this as a finisher. Having Uril get through and being able to give him double strike usually gets us to the 21 points of commander damage rather quickly. Naya Charm. Very seldom do I use the 3 damage to target creature, but it is there. I can return a card from my graveyard to my hand, which is really good, or I can tap all creatures my opponent controls in case I'm having problems getting through. If Uril doesn't have evasion, I can use Naya Charm to make sure he goes through unblocked. Dawn Charm. I actually wrote an article on this. This is one of my favorite cards, not just in Uril, but a lot of white decks that I play. I love all three options on this. The first one, prevent all combat damage. If I'm playing against Omnith or a token or other aggro deck, I can use the prevent all damage after I swing with Uril for a fog effect, and then turn around and win with Uril the next turn. I can also use Dawn Charm to regenerate Uril if someone plays a Wrath of God, and I can target a spell that targets me. This will counter a Diabolic Edict or Bribery or things of that nature. Thoughtseize, some stuff like that. My last two cards have just come through in the clutch for me. I've got Silence, which means my opponents can't cast spells this turn. I originally included this in Uril to cast during my upkeep, so especially blue mages cannot counterspell Uril, or so blue mages can't counterspell my auras or things of that nature. I have also found it when I'm a turn away from winning the game. It's like a time walk. I can cast it on my opponent's upkeep, not allowing them to do anything on their turn, and then I can swing for the win on my next turn. Very, very good card, good piece of tech for Uril. I like Silence so much, I had to put in one more effect, just very similar to it. This is Orum's Chant. For 1 white, it's an instant that says target player cannot play spells this turn. I can pay an additional 1 white mana for the kicker cost and make it where creatures can't attack this turn. Very handy when playing another aggressive deck. So that is my Uril the Miststalker deck. If you'd like to play a competitive deck that does not contain blue, that can win with commander damage and is aggressive Voltron, then Uril the Miststalker is definitely for you. Thanks for watching CMDR Decks. Please subscribe and favorite below. We'll see you next time. Thanks.